Good morning. It's good to see everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, Evan, for good singing on mercy and grace of God. We are going to take a look at the text in Matthew chapter 25, Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 30, the text that was just read for us. And so I want to talk a little bit about this. The title of the lesson, this is the first of two lessons, mini series here. We'll talk about it again next week from a different angle. But who is this God of judgment? The world today is not really into thinking of God as a God who judges, and especially a God who would judge and there would be an eternal punishment. In fact, about 40% of Americans who say they are believers in God reject the idea that God would cast anybody into eternal punishment. So that's very interesting. And then when you look at the younger generation, those 30 and under, there's only about 19 to 20% of that generation who say they are believers in God. Only about 19-20% actually believe that God would do such a thing. Usually the answer would be, I really can't believe that a loving God would send anyone to hell. So that of course is quite different than what we would read about in Scripture. And I think it's important that we talk about some of these things, and especially talk about it from the angle of the way the Bible talks about it. Now, you might say, well, didn't we always believe that that's the way the Bible talked about it? Yes and no, because I think that generally speaking, people don't really understand why God would do such a thing, why God would have such a judgment, what is going on in His mind. Who is this God of judgment? So that's going to be the lesson both this week and next week. We'll look more at God's angle next week. This week I want you to see just what God said, Jesus said to His disciples. So Matthew chapter 24 and 25 is one discourse. Matthew gave us 5 large speeches or discourses that Jesus gave. He's the only one who gives discourses like that. There's actually 9 in Matthew. He gives us 5 major. This is the last of the 5 major discourses. These are really the last words that Jesus gives to His disciples as far as in the category of teaching. Right after this, He is going to be taken, arrested, of course, crucified, raised from the dead. That will be the rest of Matthew's account. For most of you, the story of the parable of the 10 virgins and the parable of the talents, you say, man, I got that. That's well known. I've read that 100 times. What more can you say? Well, I'm going to try to say something a little bit more about what he actually tells us in that text. And that is important. I want you to remember a couple of things first off. Jesus is speaking here, as He does throughout the book of Matthew. Jesus is speaking as the King of His kingdom. And all of His major discourses that you see in Matthew are about Himself as being the king of the new kingdom that He's about to take ownership of and that He is going to be exalted and be enthroned over. In the Sermon on the Mount that we've referenced recently, that is His manifesto. That is what His kingdom is about. And He goes through and does this over and again. And this text is the last of it. Imagine what you would say to your disciples just prior to leaving the earth, to being crucified, and then going into heaven. What would be the last words? Words that deal with judgment. Matthew 24 and 25 are one discourse. Matthew 24 is about judgment upon the Jewish nation because of the rejection of Jesus and the rejection of God throughout their history. Matthew 25 transitions to the judgment of the entire world, the eternal, the final judgment that we all are looking for and waiting for. So 2 judgments that are given in the text and preparing ourselves for that. All of the parables he gives, including the last parable of chapter 24, are parables in which there is an absent Lord. There's an absent master. Someone is absent, the leader, and he's going to return. So everything centers on that particular point. And he goes from the idea and picture of care for how his disciples are caring for his house, how his disciples are preparing for his return, how his disciples are useful while they are waiting for his return, and then how his disciples care and love for one another. All of those things are the principles in which he judges. You will be interested to know that there's not one mention in chapter 25 in any of the 3 parables he gives, not one mention of any of these people being immoral and yet judged. Whoa, that alone, we could go, amen, that's the end, go home, think about that one. We're dealing with a major issue that he's talking to his disciples about, and we need to see this. Let's start quickly with the parable of the virgins that have just been read to you. This parable is very interesting. It echoes the story that fits the Jewish culture and is very foreign to our culture, but it is an interesting cultural difference that helps us understand the Lord's return. In the Jewish culture, you did not have a bride and a bridegroom that set an exact date and went to a place and they both walked down the aisle and all of that. Instead, the bridegroom would play a little game with the bride. He would say, I'll be there somewhere between Monday and Wednesday. Be ready. And get your maidens ready and get all those ready who are going to do the procession through the longest way of the streets as we rejoice, and I'll bring you to our new home together. And so it was always that way. And the bridegroom would say, get ready. And the bride would take all of her maidens, her virgins, who would gather and come with her, and they are all told, here's the time frame. And then at the last, a crier would go out through the streets and say, the bridegroom is coming, the bridegroom is coming. Get ready. And he would give them just a short time to prepare their lamps and lead the procession then through the streets. The wedding and the honeymoon was also different than what we would have today. In the weddings of that day, the vows had already been said prior to the time of the actual wedding. So there's no formal vows as they would have. That's already been said. And it has already been determined that this is a lawful marriage, even though they are not living together yet. And so then on this day, this procession would go, and they would follow through the streets and come to the new home. And then what would happen is it would be a great honor to be invited to the wedding feast. You didn't go away on a honeymoon. Your honeymoon was at your wedding venue. And you stayed for 7 days, and you feasted and enjoyed the company of your favorite people. And they enjoyed celebrating with you in the marriage. So this is the way it happened in those days, and that's what Jesus is referring to here. The critical part of this, and if you know the story, and we just read the story, but if you know, you see that there's 5 foolish virgins and 5 wise virgins. And when we look at that, we think, oh, what a difference between the 2 sets. But I will point out to you, there are far more similarities than there are differences in certain regards. The virgins are very much alike in many ways. For one way, they all want to be part of this wedding procession. There isn't anybody among these 10 that say, well, I really don't care if I miss out on this. No, they've all had their lamps. They've all got the lamps ready to light and ready to go. They are all in that category. They all want to be in this wedding procession. It is a tremendous honor to be in such a wedding. Secondly, they're all depicted as virgins. And in the New and Old Testaments, symbolically, virgins would be indicated. These are holy people. These are, after all, Jesus is talking to his disciples. These are people who aren't immoral or anything like that. They are into serving God and being a part of this procession. Further, all had lamps with the intention of being in the procession. They're waiting. Every one of them are waiting. It's not like some of them are just going out to the local party somewhere or getting involved in something else specifically. They're waiting for the coming of the bridegroom. It is therefore really important to understand that this particular parable is not a parable about 5 Christians and 5 worldly sinners. I think that's the way it gets in our minds at times, but that is not the idea here. These are all believers. These are all people who believe in the Lord. Again, he is talking to his disciples in this particular discourse. So this becomes and makes the warning even more major than we might think. It is a warning that really should wake us up. It'd be like saying, okay, in this group here, let's divide up the ones who are foolish and the ones who are wise. We'd go, whoa, you're being a little harsh here. What's going on? Well, that's exactly what Jesus does here with this group of disciples that he is teaching. Now, what may be actually puzzling to us is the question of, why didn't the 5 foolish virgins bring enough oil? Why didn't they have enough? Which then could be asked a different way. What were they doing instead? What were they thinking? You already know, we don't know when the bridegroom's coming. He could delay. He could wait. He could come at a time that you weren't expecting. In fact, that's what all of them knew. There was no question about it. What really is the problem here? And the only thing you can come up with, even though you cannot, and certainly we would have no way of saying, well, they were over here doing this or over here doing that. But the idea is they were not treating the bridegroom and the procession that they had been invited to be in, they weren't treating it with top priority. It was not the most important thing in their lives. They hadn't considered the gravity of what is going on here and that they could be caught in a situation where they're simply not ready. So the idea then points out to us that it's very important, critical lesson for us. We easily think of being careful not to transgress the Lord's will and the Lord's laws. But are we thinking and giving attention to preparation? It's not just about not doing things. It is about preparing. It's about getting ready for that coming. That doesn't cross our minds nearly as often as simply saying, well, I don't want to get involved in that sin. I don't want to get involved in that sin. I want to be pleasing to God. I don't want to do that. I want to maintain the right kind of action that I'm supposed to maintain as a disciple. Yes, yes, yes. But that is not all there is to it. Jesus constantly, and that's what he does in these parables, talks about what you are doing to get ready for his return. Is there a married woman here that didn't get ready for that day? Is there a married woman here that didn't spend a lot of time, a whole lot more than we men did usually, getting ready for that particular point? No. It's huge. In fact, the moment that the man said, "Will you?" and she said, "Yes, I will," I mean, she already had most of it planned. We all know that. She's already working on it. It's in her mind, and she's getting ready. And that's what the Lord is saying. This is the greatest wedding of all time. Are you getting ready? This wedding is a wedding of eternity. Are you getting ready? You cannot be unprepared in this. We may be Christians, but it's easy to be foolish Christians. And this is exactly, I don't know how else you read this, in which he says there were 5 of these that were foolish enough not to have enough oil. They let it burn out, and when the crier said the bridegroom's coming, they went, uh-oh, our lamps are going out, and we don't have any oil. And notice how they turn to the 5 wise and say, could we have some of the oil that you have? And they look at him and go, if we did that, we wouldn't have enough ourselves. You got to go buy your own. Well, isn't that the case? Every one of us have to buy their own. Can't share it. Love to share it, but can't share it. That's not the way the Lord worked it. You have to buy your own. So there are foolish Christians and there are wise Christians. Verse 13 is the reason Jesus says what he says when he points out, watch therefore. Watch therefore. What's the idea? You say, well, watch, that's the idea of, they should have been looking out the window. If they had been looking out the window and saw the bridegroom coming, it wouldn't have changed the fact they didn't have enough oil. The idea of watch is you need to always be ready. At any time it could happen. Most of us around here, you check your doors at night and make sure they're locked. What are the chances somebody's going to break in the middle of the night? Well, probably not real high. But all I got to know is it's 1 out of 1,000,000 and I'm locking my door. We got to be ready. And that's the analogy that Jesus continues to give to us over and again. I just have to look at it this way. They didn't believe they had to prepare that much. I didn't think I had to have enough for 2 or 3 days. Well, as you see back in the Old Testament when Naaman rejected Elisha, he said, well, behold, I thought. Now, that's the best thing to do is don't start thinking when God's already told you what to do. Don't go, behold, I thought maybe I could do it another way. So would the bridegroom be merciful once they got to the door? Maybe he'll just let us in anyway. He says, I don't know who you are. You never prepared. You didn't want to do this badly enough. I don't know who you are. What an amazing reply. Now I want you to see how he immediately transitions to the parable of the talents. In verse 14, he continues with the words, for it will be. For it will be. He is now adding to this particular parable. It is not simply, here's a separate parable. These are all tied together very, very carefully here. For it will be like. Now he adds another principle to the one he just gave of being prepared. A talent. He gathers 3 of his guys, and he says, you get 5 talents, you get 2 talents, you get 1 talent. And I'm going away, and when I come back, there's some accounting to what I've given you. Now, the typical thing that I think most readers of the Bible have thought is, what's a talent? Well, somebody says, it's like an ability. No, in this case, it's not an ability. A talent is a sum of money. And in this case, it's a large sum of money. I grew up hearing people say, I'm just a 1-talent person, and I can't do much. Wait a minute. A talent is about 20 years' wages. 2. That's a huge amount of money. The guy with 5 talents had a lifetime of money that he had to invest in order to pay and to give back to the master when he returned. 1 talent is a huge sum of money. There's no excuses here as far as, what did the Lord give? Secondly, it's neat to see that the Lord gave the talents according to their abilities, which indicates the mercy of the Lord, the care of the Lord, the compassion of the Lord. He dealt with his masters according to his servants according to their abilities. He didn't give the guy who had the ability to take care of 1 talent, he didn't give them 5. That's true of all of us. Whatever he looks and gives to us, he gives it according to our abilities. We can't complain back to him. We can't say, oh, you overwhelmed me. No, he's merciful in that way. And each servant is equally blessed with the Lord's property. No one is above or below the other. They're equally blessed. And as a matter of fact, when the rewards come, the rewards are equal as well. But the master expected each one to productively use what he gave them, to give them a return on what he had. What do you have? What are the talents that you have? Not abilities. What are the talents? Your abilities would be part of that. But he's given to every one of us, and he's asking us to use it to his glory. Use what he has given us according to our ability. So look at this. The 5 and 2 talent servants went at once, the scripture says, and traded with them. Went at once. No delay. No, I'm going to do that later. One of the things every parent understands, disobedience is when you don't do it when I tell you to do it. Well, I'm going to do it. No, I want you to do it now. I'll get to it. No. Now. Beautiful thing about Abraham's faith was that he rose early in the morning and went and did what the Lord said for him to do. And that's exactly what they did. They got up at once and went and traded and had something to give the master. And then these words are also interesting. After a long time, the master came and settled accounts with them. After how long? A long time. That's what causes us to get lazy. That's what causes us to relax. That's what causes us to think that I've got enough oil. I've done enough. No, after a long time, he returned. He told us ahead of time it would be a while before he came back, but he's coming, and we need to be ready for when he has come. So now the master returns in the parable, and there's an accounting, and he brings each one, 5 talent, 2 talent, 1 talent man, he brings each one, and there's an accounting. There will always be an accounting. When we think of judgment, Jesus says there will be an accounting. I've given blessings to you. There will be an accounting of how you use your blessings. Are they totally just used for yourself? So the question I have to ask myself, you have to ask yourself, do I have an accounting? And do I have something that I can settle the accounts of the Lord and say, you gave me this, I have taken it and made this out of what you have given me. So what will that look like? What's the accounting look like? Well, it looks like what he's given you and what you've done with it. So what he gave you? Your own life. Whatever cash you have in your pocket. Whatever you have in a bank account. Oh, but more importantly, what have you done with yourself? Is all your abilities and all the things he's given you and all your blessings, is that just been used for you? Your house is not your house, it's the Lord's house. Your car is not your car, it's the Lord's car. Your children are not your children, they're the Lord's children. Your grandchildren are not yours, they're your Lord's grandchildren. Everything. We give up everything because they were not ours in the first place. So what does the accounting then look like? In verse 21, I love the picture he gives. You have been faithful over little, to the 5 and 2 talent men. You have been faithful over little, I will set you over much. How often have you noticed that last part? I will set you over much. You see, that tells us what the Lord is doing when he's asking us to use the little that he's given us now. He's asking us to get ready for the greater that he is going to give us in eternity. And He wants us to prove ourselves that we are willing then to be a part of His kingdom work. Do it now, I reward you with great later on. You'll be a part of something much, much better. But you prove it now. The idea then clearly tells us something about what we ought to be. Finally, one talent man. I think it very interesting, instead of being honest about his neglect, he berates the character of the master. Did you see it? He also had received 1 talent, came forward and saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. Can you imagine speaking to Jesus that way? I knew you to be a hard man. You reap where you haven't sown. He gave you a talent. 20 years of wages. You're saying He didn't sow? Unbelievable accusation. You're just trying to get out of it. I can just imagine him going, here, got what you had. Yeah, you gave me. I saved it. And Jesus says something that's pretty shocking. Sometimes people don't get it right off. He gives 2 replies to the guy's excuses. First off, is basically, if that's what you thought, that I would reap where I hadn't sowed, and that I'm such a hard man, you would have thought you'd have done something better than just bury it. That's not an excuse, not a rationalization, and it doesn't get you to escape. And then what amazing words. You wicked and slothful servant. Not just wicked, but slothful. And the two go together. Slothful in the Lord's eyes concerning what He's given us is wicked. And wicked in the Lord's eyes is just being slothful about what He gave. In what way was this guy slothful? I guarantee you he wasn't slothful about the things he wanted to do. And it wasn't slothful about the effort that he wanted to put into the things he wanted to put in. That's not where he was slothful. He was slothful about the Lord's business. He is, catch it, a servant of the Lord. And a servant means I don't do my own thing in exclusion to Him. That's what a servant is. And in that society, servant didn't mean you were an employee. It meant you were owned. And the Lord bought us with the most expensive price that could ever be paid by giving up His life because He wanted something better. And to treat it in such a lackadaisical way that thanks a lot, but I'm not serving you. Whew. Who's Jesus speaking to? Oh, the world of unbelievers. No, He is not. He's speaking to His disciples, to His servants, and He's giving them this great warning. The final point. Cast the worthless servant into outer darkness. There's a choice in the parable. Enter into the joy of your Lord, or if you're not in the joy of your Lord, it's outer darkness. I remember many times being out in the desert of California at night, doing a little dirt bike riding, got lost, and the sun went down. And there's no moon. and all the desert looks exactly the same. And though it was 80 degrees in the day, within a few hours it would be 30. And I'm going to freeze to death, and being that dark and I can't see where I'm going to kill myself. And I'm all alone. And I can't find camp. And I'm yelling, Jim, can you hear me? It's an awful feeling to be in absolute darkness. And Jesus said, I'm the light. Light is here. Joy is here. Everything wonderful is here. If you don't want to be here, the other side is darkness. Please remember, Jesus said this. Is he kidding? Is he messing around with us? Is it really not so? Would he lie to us about that? If he's lying, he's the worst person who ever lived on the face of the earth to give such a parable. We have to come to reality. There's more to being a Christian than just being, and that's pretty evident in these. But look at the reward. What the Lord asks us to do is preparing for being his bride and being with him forever. Enter the joy of your Lord. You want the greatest joy ever? Enter the joy of your Lord. That's what God's always been about. You've heard me say this many times all the way through the Bible. He's always been about our joy. He's not about him just doing what he wants. It's about our joy. He is swallowed up in us living and having joy. That's what he's about. But every place else without him is outer darkness. So we need to balance something in our life. Our appreciation for the mercy of God. Yes, 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 yes. But connected with that is our responsibility to the Lord. And we need to live with that knowledge always. So give this some thought, as I do, as I have done and continue to do. Give that some thought. It should help you motivate and change how you look at Jesus and how you look at your responsibility to God. We're going to sing a song, and we'd love to help you in any way we can. Please talk to us afterwards, or if you'd like to even step forward and talk to me at this point about your need, we'd be glad to have you do that. All together we stand and while we sing.